Thank you very much. Mr. Connolly, with the permission of the committee, unless I hear an objection, but Mr. Connolly will be treated as a member of the committee.
I thank my friend.
All right. Well, let me just ask some, well, first of all, let me just note, I accept that there is criticism and just criticism of Turkey or any other country. What we need to do is make sure that that criticism is within the perspective of what is happening in other countries and what is the norm, and whether Turkey is operating as a norm or whether or not Turkey is headed in the wrong direction, which is not the norm. And let me just go through a few things here. You were mentioning about the doctor, the what was going on in Cyprus. Although this is not a hearing on Cyprus. This is a hearing on democracy in Turkey. Are there mosques on the in the Christian areas that have not been and property from the in the Christian areas of Cyprus that are also being your criticism on the of how the Christian churches and properties are being treated in the Muslim side of Cyprus? What about in the other areas? Is there a balance there somewhere, or is the Turkish side is way more repressive against Christians than the Christian side is against Muslims?
The only reason that I introduced what was happening in Turkish-occupied Cyprus was because I think it's a very useful metric for the overall quality of democracy in Turkey. After all, the Turkish armed forces have absolute control over
Right, sure.
the northern part of Cyprus, and unfortunately there's a pattern in the occupied section of Cyprus that I think speaks to the broader pattern in terms of what's happened with religious freedom issues on the Turkish mainland.
Well, to be specific, the specific question I asked, as your testimony criticized the activities going on in the Turkish areas with Christian properties, can that same criticism be leveled in Christian areas to Islamic properties?
No, absolutely not.
Okay, good. That's what I'm looking for. Because we had a bill about return of Christian properties, and by the way, I am in favor of return of properties to people who they belong to, whether they're Christians or Muslims. But there was a hearing that we had, and I have also heard that there are Muslim properties and mosques in Greece, for example, that needed to be addressed as well. And what we need to hear, what we need to find out is it a just criticism of Turkey alone? We as people who believe in freedom and treating people decently would hope no countries participate in this, but also we have to make sure we're not singling out one country for criticism that is of activities that are going on in all countries. Let me ask about the censorship there. And we did have, at this time, is the internet censored in Turkey?
It's a complicated question. There are upwards of, I believe the number is around, upwards of 30,000 internet sites that are blocked in Turkey. Blocked.
So blocked by whom?
Blocked by the government, blocked by the
so
telecommunications.
We have 30,000 sites that are blocked by the government.
That's correct, and that includes sites that a democracy might also recognize
like
as
pornography,
as being
gambling.
There could be legitimate reasons for blocking sites. The question is
how
whether
many of them are. How many would you say are?
We don't know because the government doesn't release a list of sites. This number is gathered by an NGO. The government stopped releasing a list, I think it was 3 years ago.
We have a testimony from this witness that says that the government's relying on social media to promote progress in their country, and we have another testimony here saying that we are blocking all of these sites, but we don't know whether or not how many of them are political or they may be very legitimate blockage.
Well, what we can say is that the process for blocking sites is not transparent. It is not able to be contested by the owners or the users of the site, and has been the subject of European Court of Human Rights ruling on this issue, a 2012 ruling, Yildirim v. Turkey, which held that the law that I'd mentioned that was amended in my remarks, 5651, that this law was not in line with the European Convention on Human Rights, which is legally binding upon Turkey. And the court said that Turkey needed to revise that law. They did not do so. They made these amendments this year that actually made the problems worse.
Okay, well, let me get to the, we mentioned again the judicial activity involved with some of these questions. We heard one of our witnesses talked about the purge. Which one of you? The purge of the judiciary? Someone, all right. But we heard from another witness that traditionally Turkey's judiciary is political and politicized. So is it a purge to kick out certain people of a political persuasion when they themselves probably took the spot of someone because they were more in tune with that political persuasion? So is that a justified criticism then? I'll give you a chance to answer that.
I can say a few words on it. I mean, as I said in the beginning of my remarks, judicial system was always a problem in Turkey. It didn't start in December 17th or during the Gezi protests or even before. But the problem is the people who were not problem in December 16th becomes problem in the judicial system in December 17th. Which happens? I mean, what happened in that period? Like 2 days after the December 17 investigations is filed, they said this is a very big case, and they appointed 2 new prosecutors to the system. Now 3. And 2 of those 3 signed the imprisonment of the suspects. Then those 2 were again purged. I mean, 3-4 days after the election. So this is not about the politics of judiciary or impartial behavior of the judiciary, and it becomes as a kind of, are you with me or are you against me?
Well,
are you going to follow what I say?
That leads to the question that I've got to lead up to here, and that is, we have, look, we are Americans and demand a certain standard, and let me just say that I am not in favor of our government getting involved in the internet at all. I'm in for internet freedom, and but right now we're trying to assess democracy in Turkey, all right? And if indeed we've seen this type of politicization of the judiciary in the past as standard, to criticize Turkey right now on that is not necessarily a just criticism of this administration. Now, with that said, I'm going to let my colleagues have their chance, but I'd like to get a one answer from all of you, and that is, with the challenges or the problems that we are talking about right now, this is Turkey seems to be stepping back from the positive direction in democracy, etc., that we had all been so happy about 10 years ago and 5 years ago. Is this a problem with structure? You know, the judiciary has always been politicized. Or is it a problem with you've got a leader with an ego who is now exercising powers that, because of his own personal evaluation, it's more of a personal thing, because this happens to leaders around the world as well, I might add, that if they stay in too long, that's why George Washington stepped forward and said he's getting out after 8 years. By the way, and George Washington, I think, saved our country a lot of anguish because of that. Maybe after 8 years, people begin losing perspective when they've had so much power. So is it structural, or is it personal? Just give me what is it?
Both.
What?
Both.
Both. Okay. Doctor?
It's both, but I think it's more deeply structural than personal.
Okay.
I think it's structural, but that's not the reason it should stay around. The argument that you always had problems with judiciary and media freedoms in Turkey, therefore problems today should be recognized, is anachronistic. Turkey is a European country. It should have European-style liberties, and justifying violations of freedoms of expression based on past violations is not an excuse.
Let me just note, I don't ever justify any violation of human rights.
I didn't suggest that.
I know, but I accept that as the standard that you're mentioning there. Yes, sir. Structural?
I think both.
Both. Oh my. Well, thank you very much. I'll now turn to our ranking member.